breakout stars on HGTV. Their hit show, Married to Real Estate, is much-watched TV.
When HGTV ended, Married to Real Estate in June 2025, it didn't just close a television series. It cut the cord on a format that had tied Egypt Sherrod's visibility to a network schedule for 4 straight seasons. But what makes the aftermath unusual is not the cancellation itself. It's what didn't happen next. There was no public fallout, no legal escalation, no visible retreat. Still, when HGTV fired Egypt Sherrod, she made them regret it. Let's start from the very beginning. Egypt Sherrod and Married to Real Estate. Atlanta, Georgia does not usually look like the center of a television power shift, but between 2022 and 2025, it quietly became one. In that window, Egypt Sherrod and Mike Jackson turned Married to Real Estate into one of HGTV's recognizable renovation format series, built around a simple but highly repeatable structure. Buy, design, renovate, and transform homes while weaving in family life and professional real estate strategy. The show premiered on HGTV in January 2022, marking Sherrod's return as a flagship face of the network after earlier success with Property Virgins and Flipping Virgins. From the start, HGTV placed the series within its established renovation ecosystem, alongside long-running franchises. Production was rooted in Atlanta, Georgia, where Sherrod and Jackson operated both their personal and professional lives. Sherrod, already an established real estate broker and media personality, worked through Indigo Road Realty and Indigo Road Design Group, while Jackson contributed his background in construction and renovation through Jackson Draper Renovations. The series' structure reflected that dual-engine model: real estate acquisition decisions paired with design execution, all under compressed renovation timelines. But this show was different. Unlike purely aspirational design shows, Married to Real Estate leaned heavily into practical market conditions in Atlanta's housing landscape, where inventory shifts and price pressures created natural narrative tension for each episode. Across its 4-season run, the series remained part of HGTV's steady programming rotation rather than a short experimental entry. It did not arrive as a replacement for a canceled flagship, nor as a limited-run concept. Instead, it functioned as a continuing franchise within a broader slate that included other renovation and home hunting formats. During this period, HGTV itself was still operating under the larger Warner Brothers Discovery umbrella, where content strategy increasingly balanced high-production renovation shows with lower-cost, high-volume programming like repeatable house hunting series. Within that environment, Married to Real Estate persisted through multiple renewals, completing its 4th season by May 2025, signaling network confidence. The show's format also reflected a broader shift in home renovation television, the blending of professional expertise with personal narrative. Sherrod and Jackson were not positioned as external hosts entering renovation projects. They were embedded operators in Atlanta's real estate ecosystem. Episodes typically followed a clear progression: client consultation, property acquisition or evaluation, renovation planning, execution oversight, and final reveal, anchored by Sherrod's brokerage experience and Jackson's construction expertise. This dual-role structure distinguished the series within HGTV's lineup, where many shows rely either on celebrity designers or contractor-host dynamics, but rarely both combined within a marital and business partnership framework. By the time Season 4 aired, the show had already established itself as a stable, mid- to upper-tier HGTV property in terms of visibility, though exact Nielsen rankings and internal performance metrics were not publicly detailed. HGTV, like most cable networks, does not consistently publish granular viewership breakdowns per show. instead releasing selective promotional figures during renewals or press cycles. What is clear from its 4-season lifespan is that the series maintained enough audience traction and production viability to continue through multiple cycles in a highly competitive cable environment, increasingly affected by cord-cutting trends. During its entire run-up to early 2025, there was no publicly documented indication from HGTV that Married to Real Estate was under imminent cancellation risk. No official statements, trade leaks, or entertainment reporting suggested that the show was being phased out or replaced in advance of its final season. In standard television production terms, the absence of warning signals, such as shortened seasons, reduced episode orders, or formal final season announcements, typically suggests a stable renewal environment until a network decision changes course at the end of a cycle. However, the series reached its endpoint after 4 completed seasons. The sudden cancellation. The cancellation of Married to Real Estate did not unfold like a slow network wind-down or a publicly telegraphed finale. The final season had already completed production by May 2025. At that point, there were no public indicators from HGTV suggesting that the series was being phased out. No final season branding had been widely promoted, and no official narrative of conclusion had been attached to its run. The show had operated within HGTV's broader renovation portfolio since its January 2022 premiere, continuing a multi-season presence anchored in Atlanta, Georgia, where Egypt Sherrod and Mike Jackson built both their on-screen projects and real-world real estate operations. The turning point arrived on June 24, 2025, when Sherrod posted a statement to Instagram confirming that HGTV had decided not to move forward with the series. That message, later widely quoted across outlets including People, Realtor.com, and TV Insider, contained the key line that defined the entire situation. HGTV has decided not to move forward with Married to Real Estate. The phrasing was simple, direct, and notably free of attribution of blame. It marked the first public confirmation that the show had ended. But the story does not end here. Between June 24th and June 26, 2025, multiple entertainment and industry outlets independently verified the cancellation. Reports consistently aligned on 3 core facts. The decision came from HGTV, it was not initiated by Sherrod or Jackson, and no detailed public explanation was provided by the network. Sherrod and Jackson's tone across statements was described as disheartened but grateful, emphasizing appreciation for the crew, audience, and their professional experience rather than conflict or dispute. Sherrod and Jackson had been on a family trip to the Mediterranean shortly before the announcement. They completed the trip, returned to the United States, and were then notified of the cancellation. In later clarifications referenced in entertainment reporting, Sherrod described the timing as hurtful. The couple was not filming during the trip, and there is no evidence that the vacation was connected to production schedules or network decision-making. Outlets also make clear that while the timing felt abrupt from a personal perspective, the cancellation itself was not officially described as occurring during vacation, but rather after return. Sherrod and Jackson did not issue allegations against the network or suggest contractual disputes. But why? Why cancel a show without any warning or scandal? Well, hang tight for this one. HGTV's problems will not stop chasing them. By 2025, HGTV was no longer operating in the same predictable rhythm that once defined cable home renovation television. What had been a tightly curated slate of long-running renovation franchises began showing signs of structural compression. Fewer renewals, shorter cycles, and a noticeable shift in what kinds of shows were being prioritized. Industry reporting from outlets like Deadline and trade commentary around Warner Bros. Discovery's broader restructuring consistently points to one conclusion. HGTV was not reacting to a single show or host, but recalibrating an entire programming model under financial pressure. The most visible signal came through a wave of cancellations and non-renewals clustered around mid-2025. Among the shows affected were Farmhouse Fixer, Bargain Block, Izzy Does It, and Battle on the Beach, alongside additional franchise adjustments and scheduling uncertainty across the network's renovation lineup. While each series had its own performance history and audience base, the shared pattern was not individual failure. It was timing. Multiple established formats exited or were reduced within the same programming window. This clustering matters because HGTV's business model has historically depended on stability. For years, the network relied on repeatable renovation formats, recognizable hosts, predictable episode structures, and scalable production in real housing markets. That model worked especially well in the 2010s when cable viewership was still relatively steady, and production costs could be balanced against consistent advertising revenue. By 2025, however, that balance had shifted. Rising renovation costs steadily eroded the economics of HGTV's core format as multiple pressures stacked at once between 2020 and 2025. Key construction materials like lumber, flooring, tiles, and fixtures surged. Lumber alone spiked to roughly 3 to 4 times the pre-pandemic levels at its peak in 2021, while broader finish materials saw cumulative increases of about 10 to 30%, depending on category. At the same time, skilled labor shortages pushed construction wages up by roughly 20 to 25% across the U.S., with premium rates in filming hubs where crews had to meet tight production deadlines. Permits added further strain not just through fees, but through delays that stretched from weeks to months in some cities, disrupting tightly scheduled shoots. On top of this, on-site logistics, temporary utilities, equipment rentals, insurance, waste removal, and neighborhood filming requirements rose by an estimated 10 to 20% plus and became more expensive under compressed TV timelines. Together, these factors meant each renovation episode cost significantly more to produce, while also carrying a higher risk of delay, directly squeezing margins in a format built on fast, visually intensive home transformations. At the corporate level, HGTV sits under Warner Bros. Discovery, a media conglomerate that has been undergoing continuous restructuring since its formation. There's been a push toward cost efficiency and portfolio simplification. Renovation shows like Married to Real Estate, Bargain Block, or Battle on the Beach require coordinated teams, construction timelines, material sourcing, and on-location filming that can stretch budgets and schedules. By contrast, real estate browsing or design consultation formats can often be produced faster, with fewer external dependencies. As cable ratings continue to fragment and streaming platforms reshape viewer expectations, networks like HGTV are under pressure to maintain output volume while reducing per-episode cost exposure. Then there's audience fragmentation. HGTV no longer operates in an environment where a small number of flagship shows dominate viewer attention across the entire network. Instead, audiences are distributed across streaming platforms, social media clips, and niche content creators who replicate renovation and design content at far lower production costs. This creates a competitive pressure loop. Traditional TV must either scale up production quality to compete or scale down costs to survive, but doing both simultaneously becomes increasingly difficult. Canceling shows, however, will not make the problems go away. HGTV may have made a huge mistake by firing Egypt Sherrod. HGTV removed one of its most visible renovation personalities at a time when Married to Real Estate, hosted by Egypt Sherrod and Mike Jackson, had already completed 4 seasons and established itself as part of HGTV's flagship Atlanta-based renovation slate. Across HGTV's own promotional framing and press materials, the series is consistently associated with multi-platform reach in the tens of millions, with narration-based reporting and network marketing citing figures around 19 million viewers across seasons and platforms rather than a single-season linear rating. The show aired globally in over 80 international territories. Performance context is further defined through Rock the Block, HGTV's high-stakes renovation competition series. In Season 3, Sherrod and Jackson competed and won after 6 weeks of timed renovation challenges, culminating in a completed home appraised at approximately $931,000, reflecting roughly a $400,000 plus value increase over its baseline appraisal. Post-show reporting widely circulated that their finished property was later sold off-market for over $1.3 million. HGTV programming coverage and cast interviews also positioned the couple as breakout talent following the win. Executive commentary across HGTV promotional ecosystems repeatedly referred to them as next big stars during the show's peak visibility years. Critical reception of Married to Real Estate within HGTV's broader lineup remained stable rather than volatile. While HGTV does not publicly release granular Nielsen breakdowns for all individual series, audience tracking discussions within industry commentary and viewer analysis consistently place the show in a mid to upper tier HGTV performance band, comparable to established renovation franchises rather than experimental or low-performing formats. Viewer discussions and trade commentary repeatedly noted that while ratings fluctuated seasonally, as is typical for cable lifestyle programming, the series remained competitive against other HGTV staples that continued airing during the same period. Multiple renovation series ended or were not renewed in the same cycle, including Farmhouse Fixer, Bargain Block, and Battle on the Beach, among others. Viewer commentary and trade reporting linked these decisions to rising production costs and portfolio restructuring rather than isolated performance failures. In parallel, Reddit and viewer forums highlighted a recurring comparison point. Married to Real Estate was frequently described by audiences as outperforming or matching other HGTV titles that remained on air, particularly in perceived engagement and repeat viewership, though these claims are not formally published by Nielsen at show-level granularity. Post-cancellation reporting and interviews also outline what was planned, but never realized under HGTV. Sherrod and Jackson had publicly discussed expanding the Married to Real Estate concept beyond Atlanta, including broader storytelling around real estate as a wealth-building mechanism across different U.S. housing markets. Later interviews indicate they were actively developing new television concepts such as Home Abroad with Egypt and Mike and Deserving Design, reflecting an intended evolution toward international property storytelling and legacy-focused renovation formats rather than purely local flips. These projects, however, were no longer tied to HGTV at the time of announcement. Sherrod has also stated in multiple interviews that she retains ownership of the Married to Real Estate trademark, meaning the brand identity itself remains under her control even after HGTV's broadcast discontinuation. Before we dive any further, let's take a peek behind the curtain. This is how the Married to Real Estate couple lives. Sherrod, born November 16, 1976 in Philadelphia, was raised primarily in her grandparents' home, where she has described sleeping in a closet-sized space during childhood. Jackson, born November 11, 1977, and raised in Hempstead, Long Island, came up through construction apprenticeships in his family's trade network, later expanding into DJ work and television hosting. Their paths first crossed in the entertainment ecosystem of New York radio in the early 2000s. where Sherrod worked as a radio personality and Jackson was active as a DJ. They formally reconnected in 2004 during a real estate-related project involving a property Sherrod owned, and Jackson worked on as a contractor. By 2010, the partnership had consolidated into marriage, with the couple's wedding on September 11, 2010, in New Jersey after roughly 6 years of on-and-off professional and personal overlap. The union formalized what later became a branded working relationship on HGTV, but at its core, it also created a blended household structure that included Jackson's daughter from a prior relationship. Their family expanded with 2 daughters together, Kendall Ray, born in January 2012, and Harper Sky, born in February 2019, alongside Jackson's older daughter, Simone, from a previous relationship. The household structure is often described in public profiles as a 5-person family unit, shaped by co-parenting across different phases of Jackson's earlier life and Sherrod's later career acceleration in television. Professionally, the couple's personal life is inseparable from their on-screen identity. They met as individuals operating in adjacent industries, but married to real estate formalized that overlap into a televised working marriage. Outside of television, their partnership spans more than 2 decades of sustained collaboration across radio, real estate, construction, and media production. In interviews and social posts, Jackson has repeatedly emphasized communication, forgiveness, and shared faith as the structural mechanisms that maintain their marriage. So, what is the couple up to now? Egypt Sherrod's post-cancellation trajectory. The moment Married to Real Estate ended on HGTV, Egypt Sherrod's career entered a reallocation phase. One of the most clearly documented developments in this period is the continued expansion of Indigo Road Realty, Sherrod's real estate brokerage. The company is scaling beyond its Atlanta base into multiple U.S. housing markets, including Dallas, Houston, and Orlando. These expansions reflect a multi-market brokerage strategy rather than a localized media brand extension, signaling a shift from television-driven visibility to direct real estate infrastructure growth. Alongside brokerage expansion, Sherrod continued developing the broader Indigo Road ecosystem, which includes design services and home-related consumer products. Unlike television production, which is subject to renewal cycles and network scheduling decisions, these business lines operate continuously across retail, client services, and licensing arrangements. This diversification is significant in industry terms because it reduces reliance on a single distribution channel. Another key component of her post-HGTV trajectory is her continued presence in public speaking and entrepreneurship-focused initiatives. Sherrod has participated in events centered on business development, real estate education, and women's entrepreneurship, positioning herself within a broader category of media-adjacent business educators rather than purely television talent. This role is structurally different from her HGTV identity. Instead of being a host within a network-produced format, she operates as an independent brand speaker, where audience engagement is not tied to a show schedule, but to event-based appearances and direct audience outreach. Sherrod and her husband, Mike Jackson, are also developing new television concepts, signaling that while HGTV no longer anchors their production pipeline, television itself remains part of their broader media strategy. These projects are in the development stage. Platforms and distribution are not fully disclosed so far. A particularly notable element of Sherrod's post-cancellation narrative is her public statement regarding intellectual property ownership. She confirmed that she retains rights to the Married to Real Estate trademark, meaning the brand identity itself is not owned by HGTV. This allows for potential future reuse, adaptation, or redevelopment of the concept under different platforms or business arrangements, depending on contractual structure. Throughout this period, Sherrod's public communication has remained consistent in tone. Rather than framing the HGTV cancellation as a conflict or dispute, Her messaging emphasizes forward movement, business continuity, and expansion of independent ventures. There has been no publicly documented litigation, contractual dispute, or adversarial statement directed at HGTV. Instead, her positioning aligns with a transition narrative, one phase of her media career ending at the network level and another continuing through entrepreneurship and brand ownership. The center of gravity has shifted from HGTV's production ecosystem to a self-directed portfolio spanning real estate brokerage, design services, consumer products, speaking engagements, and potential independent media production. This is a move from being talent within a network to operating as an independent business entity with multiple revenue streams. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.